Hey, good afternoon, people. It's 12 noon East Coast time, and where Carolyn is, it's 9 a.m. Have you had your first or second cup of coffee?
I brought the big mug today.
The big mug, I love it. That's what they
The
do in California.
post-election mug.
This is
Yeah,
gonna last me 45 minutes, so
they have the big mug over there. Hey, thanks for joining us. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but this is our fourth session doing this great series with Shop-Ware on September 23rd, Benefits of Remote Pay. Broadly was here on the 30th of September, 28th of October, Analytics with Rick White, Part 1. And it was so good, Rick. I don't know if you know this, but it was so good, we decided to have a Part 2. Welcome for that. We're going to go over KPIs today. This series, I have to tell you, it's made it easy to learn from great industry people, and thanks to Carolyn for making this happen. Who's with me is Rick White, 180 Biz. Hello, Rick.
Guten Tag.
Good to see you, man. Nursing a knee surgery. We're so glad you toughed through that to be with us.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Thank you so much. Lucas Underwood is here from L&N Performance, Blowing Rock, North Carolina.
Absolutely. Good to see you, everybody.
And Carolyn Coquillette, CEO, Shop-Ware in Luscious Garage, San Fran. Hi, Carolyn.
hey, pleasure to be here as always. Carm, thank you again so much for putting this on. We had so much fun a week ago.
Oh, we did.
We had to do it again.
Not only did we not complete it, but we had fun. And I think we're here not because of the data that we're going to give, because we're just going to have fun. So if you're here with us on Facebook, on our social media platform, check in, give us a like, give us a share. And even if you miss this, you're going to be able to watch this over the course of as it continues to live on the Shop-Ware Facebook site. And Carolyn, you just may even put this up on the website as an MP4 to watch. Well, today, continuing monthly and annual KPIs brought to us by Rick White. Numbers are so important, Rick, and I know, as a coach, and I know you're so big in culture. Every time I do a show, you're on when we talk culture. But numbers, is that also one of the closest to your heart?
I am affectionately called the numbers Nazi. So, because in fact, I talked about this with a group last night. You can go to a coach and talk about all different kinds of things and learn all kinds of things. But why are we here? Right? It's to become a better business owner. How do we measure that improvement? It's always going to be with numbers.
Yeah.
Because the goal is, I don't care if you're talking culture. I don't care if you put a foosball table in your break room, or, you bring birthday cakes in and everything like that. We're doing it for an ulterior motive. And the ulterior motive is to create that environment where people flourish so that our business will do better and our numbers improve. Everything goes back to numbers eventually. Everything you want in life. If you want more freedom, you need better numbers. If you want to have more people in your shop so you don't have to do everything, you need better numbers. Everything comes down to numbers. And because if we don't have the numbers, if we aren't watching the numbers, we have a hobby.
Rick, when you take on a new client and you see the numbers can use a lot of improvement, do you work with the owner to get that right attitude going?
Yeah, I think the first thing we've got to work on is what's possible, because you've got years of experience telling them what they can't do. So the first thing we've got to work on is what's possible, and get them to believe in something bigger and better than what they've got right now, and then give them the tools to show them how to number one, get there, but number two, see the improvement.
You just said something so interesting. You said they can't do, but they don't know what they can do.
Well, no, they've done everything, right? We've done everything. And everything usually comes down to doing one or two things 20 or 30 times. It doesn't work, because you got to understand that life and business improvement is all about what I call gap management. It's the difference between where I'm at right now and where I want to go. Now, instead of, Thomas Jefferson once said, be firm in the destination and flexible in the path. Unfortunately, we tend to be the opposite. We tend to be very, very firm in how we decided we're going to get to where we want to go. And when it doesn't work after 10 or 20 times, what we do is we decide to bring what our potential is closer to where we are so that we don't disappoint ourselves, right? Instead of saying, okay, plan A didn't work, plan AA didn't work, plan ZZ didn't work, but not giving up, right? I'm going here. If it kills me, I'm going here. We don't have that in our industry. We try it 4 or 5 times, and then we say, well, I just was thinking too big. I don't want to really go here. I want to do this. And that's so sad because I'm telling you, every one of us is living smaller than we should be.
Absolutely.
And that's all the reason, Lucas, that coaching is so important in our industry, because I think so many shop owners just live too close to the problem that they have, and they can't pull themselves back. And to me, that was the beauty. Listen, I had a podcast coach for 4 years, and every time I thought I was kind of doing right and building the brand and the things that I was doing, he'd humble me. And you know what? Every once in a while, I'd say, I guess someone is smarter than me. And to me, that was cathartic for me to, just realize that I wasn't the brightest bulb in the tank.
It's tough, right? And I went through the exact same thing when I started coaching with Rick. I thought that I had the answers, but I knew it wasn't working. And Rick finally said, when are we going to maybe stop trying all these things that haven't worked continually, and maybe we try something different? How about we do it my way? Right. And that was a little tough for me to hear, that my way wasn't working. But, and he talks about the potential in the numbers. I think that's so important. We talked about that last week, is that having an idea of how big your potential is, right? Because if we come in and we think we can do 10,000 a month or 20,000 a month, guess what? We hit that 20,000 mark, or we hit that 18,000 mark, and we're okay with that. But if we don't base our goals off of our true potential, I hate to tell you, you're nowhere near it.
Lucas, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
When in your wildest dreams did you ever think you were going to achieve the sales numbers that you're achieving today?
Oh, I never. When Rick and I started working together, he set my daily sales goal at $3,500, and I literally almost fell out of my chair, and I said, "There's no way, it's not gonna happen. I'm sorry, Buckaroo, not in this town. If you look at the guy down the street, he doesn't charge that much, and I can't charge that much for parts and labor. My gosh,
you were afraid of the $1 million mark. That's what was wrong with you,
right? Yeah. So now here we are, and I'm calling Rick saying, "Hey, I don't think 5,800 a day is enough. Maybe we should go up." Because we're consistently hitting that 5,800 mark,
Rick, how long did it take? How long did it take for Lucas to see the forest?
What typically happens, you can get them to get the jump. You'd be amazed at how many times I get accused of taking drugs. Okay? Because when I sit down with a shop like Lucas that's doing $15,000 a month and said, "Hey, you should be doing between 100 and 150 a month in sales," they go, "You're on drugs." I mean, that's just kind of the go-to, right? And then what was fun is to watch the initial growth. And the initial growth, I think, Lucas, got you to about 60 a month.
Yes. Yep.
And then Lucas kind of plateaued there for a while. Mm-hmm. And now it's me getting behind him and either pushing or kicking and saying, "Dude, you got more in you. You got more in you. Let's start getting more elegant about this." Yep. And now, I mean, I'm not going to say numbers, but he's well above that 60. And he's starting to hit that window of his potential with his current facility.
Yeah.
Right? Now, understand, we are now in the process of building a bigger facility. Mm-hmm. So his numbers are going to go exponentially up.
Absolutely. And look, I hear so many that say, "Well, I just need a bigger shop, or I just need more techs, or I just need this, or I need that." Listen, guys, we've got the same size staff. We've got the same size building. We didn't have to change all that. And the problem is, so many shops, they try and fix it with adding on to something. They get another bay, they get another tech. And the problem is, if you can't manage what you have now, if you can't manage that opportunity, adding more is only going to stress you out and upset you. It's
Right.
just not going to fix the problem.
Making your problems larger.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I need more cars. I need more bays. I need better techs. I need more techs. No, dude, work with what you got.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
How many people leave before the problem is consistently one person?
Yeah.
The one who's still left behind.
Yeah,
Right.
the one you're looking in the mirror every day. And one sees you see in the mirror every day. There's your problem right there.
Right. These exchanges have one common theme, and it's me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the first time I
Absolutely.
got divorced, I said, she sucked. Right? Actually, whatever. But the second time I got divorced, I had to step back and go, wait a minute, what's the common denominator here? Oh, it's me, So then you start this self-reflection and say, wow, I was a real asshole. I can do better. And here I am, married to my wife, Brenda, now my third wife. We've been married for 17 years, and it's absolutely amazing. So,
Well, presumably there's fewer texts than there are wives, so you really got to be careful when
you got to be careful.
With the
You can't
shop.
go burning through them, right? And I'll tell you, 7 kids. So,
Hey, I thank you all for going down this rabbit hole. And there was good learning here. Appreciate that. Lucas, very transparent. Rick, you were the disciplinarian. Love that. Carolyn, you just shored up the sidelines. Now let's get into some monthly KPIs, Rick.
all right. So what we're going to do is monthly. What we want to look at monthly, number one, is we want to look at expenses, right? Here's what I tell people all the time. Measure your sales daily. Look at your gross profit weekly. And again, that's the caveat that you're paying weekly. If you're paying, twice a month or every other week, then that's the trigger. But look at your gross profit weekly, and then look at your expenses and net income monthly. All right. So now our expenses, pretty simple. Expenses dollars divided by total sales, less tax, of course. And the target is 35 to 45% in expenses. Now, what's really cool, and I'm starting to see this more and more now, is, we used to go for that 20% net profit. That was kind of nirvana for our industry. I now have shops that are running 30 and 35% net profit because we have sales and we're maximizing the productivity of the location so that as sales go up, expenses go down as a percentage very, very quickly. So we end up with the same expenses and a lot more sales. And all of a sudden we're hitting 30, 35% net profit. And now I got to tell you, that's pretty sweet, right?
That speaks to me actually because when we were talking about spreading the problem, when you're talking about just I need more bays, I need more people, if you don't lean it up and figure out how to get the most out of your people, you're not going to get those efficiencies of scale.
Correct.
Because you're just wasting more money. I obviously have a hybrid shop, and the joke is that you can't make any money on those cars, so you have to be efficient, right? You have to figure out how to run your shop, super efficiently. When I go into some European shops and they're looking at some of the systems that they're using, and I'm like, guys, there's money all over this place. There is money just laying around in the corners of the shop because you're making so much money in the cars, you don't have to go get it. It's like it's profound. When you start to actually solve that problem and then start to scale, there's a lot of extra bottom line.
Yeah, and a lot of it. First of all, what we got to do is teach people that they got more potential, and then give them the opportunity so they have the ability to, number one, increase production with the current business model that they have, and get them to tile in their numbers, have a gross profit model, and have a net profit model so that you're doing it intelligently. And it's amazing what can happen. It really is. When I take a shop that was doing $100,000 a year, $100,000 a month, and a year later they're doing $200,000 a month with the same staff, right? That's all about throughput. That's about efficiencies and productivity and getting the stuff done.
Right, that's speed of service.
That is just out the door crazy. And now they keep their expenses, right? Think about this for one sec. They keep their expenses about the same. Now, that shop was doing $100,000 a month. Let's say they got their expenses covered. At the very worst, if they were at 50% gross profit, increasing that $100,000 a month in sales, they just dropped $50K to the bottom line every single month. $600,000 more to the net profit line. And see, what happens is I start talking those numbers with shop owners and their eyes glass over and their heads fog up because they can't visualize that kind of profit. But it's out there.
You know, you quoted earlier, who was it? Is it Jefferson?
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson, yes.
Yeah. I was thinking of another quote from Henry Ford, which is, whether you think that you can or you think that you can't, you're right.
You're absolutely right.
Like, perfect.
Which I love using coaching. So when someone says I can't do that, I go, you're absolutely right.
Right.
Rick, do you believe at a young age we're conditioned to realize that the net profit or the monies that I want to have, we lived in a modest home, Dad had a blue collar job, you know, I can't make $600,000 a year in my business?
Oh, no, we're not talking $600,000 being made. We're talking about $600,000 profit. They're already making money in the business.
Point is, are we conditioned not to accept the fact that we...
I think there's a lot of psychological baggage that we pick up through our lifetime, where we have people that say, I want to make a lot of money, but then on the inside they were brought up that was money's evil, or the only way you can make money is to rip people off. And, you know, only crooks have, you know, cash. And we've got to, that's part of coaching. I mean, I joke when I told you, I think when I first started coaching, I figured I got to share some strategies, teach them how to read their numbers, and I walk away. And I tell people all the time, this job comes with a couch. I spend 80% of my time in the psychology of the owner, because that's where we need the help. We've got to overcome the limiting thoughts and beliefs we have. We got to get rid of them.
You know, we get into the business because we want to help people. You know, the joke is, if you wanted to make money, why the hell would you go into auto repair? Which isn't to say you can't make money on auto repair, but the idea is, like, you know, that's like the hardest place to go make money. Fixing cars is really hard.
Yeah, you know what they say, Carolyn? There's an old joke that says, you know how to make $1 million in auto repair? Start with $2 million.
Right. So, you know, we get into this business because we care about the cars, we care about the people, whatever, and then we end up not caring about ourselves, right? We don't put ourselves in that equation, which is that, you know, we need to be whole as a part of this too. Right. I mean, and like, certainly, I think we were talking about this last week, which is like, how do you make yourself the CEO instead of the chief everything officer? You got to be the executive officer. How do you make time? How do you delegate? How do you balance? Right. And it's that same thing around the revenue side or the profit side, which is, you know, what needs to be left over for me? Like, what are my expectations here on how this is going to work? Anyway, so all very insightful, Rick.
Well, and you said something that's really interesting that I really have a problem with, Carolyn. Sorry. And you said, what's left over for me? And that's the wrong way to think about profit.
Right. Everybody, right? Everything else.
We got to take care of ourselves first. Why do we put the oxygen mask on ourselves first if we're in the plane? Well, I think it's to stop us from screaming. But I mean, anyway, right? You know, if there's a sudden loss of pressure in the cabin, that means we're either falling or there's a big ass hole in the plane, right? But whatever. So I put the mask on so I don't scream. But it's because I can't take care of somebody else if I'm not whole first. Amen. You know? And something that I heard a long time ago, and I really think this is profound. I was listening to Oprah with Iyanla Vanzant. And she's an amazing person. They both are. But Iyanla one time said, the Bible talks about the cup and the cup running over, your cup running over. And what she said was, everything that comes out of that cup is for somebody else. But what's in that cup is yours. That you've got to take care of yourself, because if your cup is empty, you've got nothing to give. So we've got to take care of ourselves first, not in a selfish way, but in a way that we can be there, be healthy, be whole, you know, mind, body, spirit, in a way that we can truly serve others. Excuse me one second.
Yeah, we've had this challenge in my business where, you know, San Francisco is such an expensive place to live. And in order for, you know, and you can't outsource auto repair, right? I mean, you got to live close enough to drive here, and with the traffic and everything, you got to live pretty close. And so, my goal is to get every single employee of the business making six figures. And you don't have to be making six figures as a GS, but you got to be on a track to make six figures eventually, because that's what it's going to take for you to be able to buy a home, raise a family here. And that's what we should expect you to be able to do if you're going to be able to work in this business, right? We had previously folks, who were basically living in their parents' basement. I'm like, that's not a sustainable model for my employee, for my employee base. So, we've been working together as a team to say, what does this business need to make in order for all of us to be able to continue to be here, right? And so it's really it's not just a what does Carolyn want? It's a collaboration around what do we all need, and I think that's where that cup runneth over question is, which is as the business gets to grow, it's like we all get to benefit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's funny, there's a lot of times when we as owners will do something we wouldn't do for ourselves, but we'll do it for somebody else. Right. And here's some things that are coming up to anybody that's watching. One of the things I say all the time is, it used to be we're looking for 70% gross profit in labor. You need 75% today because there's benefits you've got to start giving out that you're not giving now. It might be a 4-day work week. It might be health insurance for them and their families. It might be a retirement plan. It might be a school, an education plan. There's and I don't remember the numbers. It's like a 529C or something like that, where you can set up. It's like an IRA where you can have the employee can pull money and set it aside for their kids' schooling. You can match it, right? If I have a bunch of young guys, man, and they got young kids, that's going to be more important to them maybe than an IRA or a 401k, right? We've got to be able to recognize that the days of treating everybody the same are over.
I honestly think that this is just the appropriate pressure that is being put on us as shop owners to finally put our prices appropriately to the driving public so that we can take care, so we're actually operating as, reasonable businesses, and we're able to take care of everyone, because we've been essentially subsidizing car ownership, and our technicians and our other people in our business have had to bear the brunt of that. And so finally it's like, oh, well, if you don't offer these level of benefits, you're not going to be able to put people in the base. So finally we have to be like, all right, great. Well, what do I actually finally need to architect in terms of my business to be able to accomplish that? How do I deliver auto repair? So it's really, I think it's really good for the business, but good for the industry.
It absolutely is. And I was talking to a shop owner last night. He's brand new. He's about a year and a half in. And he was like, I don't offer paid vacation to my team. And I'm like, what? Yeah, I can't afford it. So what I did real quick is said, how much do you need? How much money do you need for paid vacation? And he gave me a number, and I said, divide that by 50. I said, okay, now your techs are producing, let's say 25 hours a week. He goes, yes. I said, divide that by 25 hours. What did it come out to? $1.36. I said, go up $2 an hour on your labor rate, and every week pull $2 times the hours billed, put it in a separate account. You got vacation, offer paid vacation. There are so many ways that we can very, very quickly figure out what we can and can't do. I had a shop, he's now a client. He pays 100% health insurance for his entire team and their families. And he called me up one year and said, Rick, my health insurance is going up $28,000.
Right.
We can't absorb that. And we're going to, he's like, we stack fear. Right. So he's like, I can't afford that. I'm going to have to get the employees to pay something. They're going to leave me. I'm not going to have the team I have anymore. Right. And we just get worse and worse. So I said, stop, give me some numbers. We ran some numbers. I said, go up $4 an hour on your labor. You're going to end up with about $32,000 more in sales. That'll cover the $28,000 and you'll have $4,000 more. And it took care of it.
You know what? I got to say, my takeaway from this little segment is this. I've always been a believer in getting out the yellow pad, this tool right here that I'm showing you, and a calculator, and starting to write down your problems, throw some numbers on a piece of paper, get out the calculator, and just like Rick said, divide this by 52, and it's like one of these V8 moments. And
what I call it is chunking down.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work, if you can't do it, then call Rick White.
Exactly.
Chunk it down. I love numbers.
I used to tell Rick I couldn't, and Rick's like, "Why? Well, have you tried?" Yeah, I've tried. And every time I got caught, man. Every single time. He's like, okay, what'd you try? Oh, don't ask me that. It's not what we're talking about. And so many shop owners, they say, well, I've done this and I've done that, but they really haven't. They've not dug into it to find it.
Rick taught you how not to lie. That's exactly what happened. Let's go back to the numbers.
It's amazing to me. I was talking to a client about self-respect last week. And I said to him, you only need to do two things for self-respect. And he said, what's that? I said, tell yourself the truth, right? About what you're feeling, what you're going through, whatever that is. Be honest and keep your word to yourself. Yeah. We lie to ourselves more than we lie to anybody else. Right? I get up in the morning and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. My chest is all puffed up. And by the end of the day, I'm dragging and I'm going home like this. I ain't getting anything done. Right? And what we don't understand is when we don't keep our word to ourselves, it chips away at our self-esteem. It chips away at our image. It chips away at our confidence. So you need strong self-respect if you're in business for yourself. And you're going to do that by being honest and keeping your word.
Are you familiar with the I'm blanking. It's the the effect of marginal gains. This idea that if you make incremental improvements up or down, or you don't, the out year impact is like profound, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like this idea that like you don't have to like change your whole life tonight, right? Just like pick one small thing that you're going to focus on, that you say this is actually the most important thing, and then you just keep on working. You pick another thing, like, okay, I need to replace the mirror in the bathroom, or I need to upgrade the computers at the front counter, or whatever the case may be. These little things, and they all start to aggregate, and the impact you have on your KPIs and all this other stuff is that's how you get there, right? It's totally surmountable if you just, like you said, you got to chunk it up.
It's literally, I tell people all the time, you're starting down a path you don't want to go down, right? And it's not about taking a left turn or a right turn. It's about nudges. So I'm 1% off here and it's not a big deal. And then I'm like this and it's starting to be a bigger deal. And then I'm off like this. And in a year, I'm in a completely different spot than where I was heading. And all I did was made a couple of incremental shifts, sometimes in my mindset, sometimes in my focus and expectations, sometimes it's in strategy, sometimes it's in how am I going to engage the customer, my confidence, and all of a sudden I'm in a completely different place. And people need to understand that happiness isn't attained by achievement. Happiness is attained by progress. We are actually happiest when we're progressing, not when we achieve.
Incremental improvements.
That's all it is. And if you look at it this way here. I did this, Milwaukee came to me and they said, one of the chapters, and they said, we're doing a thing on cutting expenses. Can you give us some tips on how we can get really good at cutting expenses? And I said to them, here's what I'm going to tell you. You're asking a $3 question, expecting a $30,000 answer. I said, cutting expenses is the least effective path to profit. And then I showed them a business example. And with this certain company, cutting their expenses 5% increased profit by $9,900. If we increased sales by 5%, profit went up $12,000. And if we increased gross profit by 5%, net profit went up by $54,000.
Right.
Okay, 5%. 5% is nothing. Okay? So I said to them, you're asking a $3 question. Here's the $30,000 question. How do I increase sales and gross profit? You want to watch your expenses. You want to monitor them. You want to be aware of them, but you don't sit there, because in my mind, if I'm in the cutting expenses mode, I have a fixed mindset and I have a scarcity mindset and I'm looking just to cut. What's the first thing shops do when business gets slow? They cut marketing. What's the worst thing a business can do when it gets slow? Cut marketing. Okay. So we've got to have this. You've got to have the right mindset about this stuff, right? We want to be aware of what our expenses are. We don't want to be, I see people just, what happens is their numbers go up. And Lucas, this never happened to Lucas, no.
Never.
But his
No.
numbers went up and they start spending like drunken sailors. Because all of a sudden I got this cash I never had before.
Let's be clear. I've always spent like a drunken sailor. Okay. I just need to clear that up.
I didn't want to throw you under the bus and back it up, dude.
That mic sounds great,
Thank
Lucas.
you.
That sounds really good.
But he did.
There's a soundbite right there. I've always
There it is.
spent like a drunken sailor. Yeah. So it's one of those things where we've just got to go through and be smart about this stuff. Have a profit model, have a gross profit model where you have target gross profit. All of us, every one of us has been trained to have a gross profit target. But then we stop there. No, how are you going to get there? How are you going to measure it? Every income stream you have should have a target profit model so that you can go in and make sure you're achieving it. And then when you have that target profit model, now you go to a net profit model. And I am a huge proponent of profit first. You pull your payout, you pull your profit out first. Why? Because now it's not left over.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm very passionate about this.
Get it?
And what happens is, because if I pull the profit out and I pull my payout first, now I have to handle my expenses with what's left over.
Right. And you have to learn to live within that bound.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. And then if you're not making enough expenses for the short term, you cut your expenses and do what you got to do to keep them in line. And then you grow your sales and your profit to be able to do what you want to do with your expenses.
And that's when you realize the power of sales and margin. Exactly right, Rick. Yeah.
It's unreal. All right, so let's go to the next thing. Next thing we want to look at is net income. Okay, hold on a sec. There we go. Net income. We want that to be, I'm telling you, 20 to 30% is the benchmark today. Okay? Now, most of us from our shops, we've been trained. Okay, so business owners, I see three kinds of management styles. Number one, I call it head in the sand. That's where I go, there's some really bad stuff all around me, and I'm just gonna pretend it's not there and it'll go away. And we should all be big enough, wise enough, and smart enough to realize that any problem left unattended just gets bigger and it needs to be dealt with. I actually sat down with a shop owner one day. He asked me I was doing a on-site out in St. Louis, and he was in Illinois. We met halfway, had dinner. He brought me his financials, and I'm looking at his financials, and I said, your balance sheet doesn't look right. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, your payables, they're not right. He goes, oh no, I don't put them in. They depress me. And I said, well, the goal of the balance sheet is not whether it depresses you or not. It's to give you a number, right? And if it can't give you a number, we have a problem. But you'd be amazed at how many times I see the head in the sand management style, right? Or it's the blinder style. I just got to fix cars. I need more cars. I need more cars. I need more cars. No, dude, we got to step back and look at this. The second thing I see is management by checkbook, where I see a balance and my balance is getting bigger or staying the same. I must be doing okay. And then the third style is management by profit, which is I print my P&L and it shows a profit at the end of the month, and okay, I did great. But let me ask you a question. When you get stuck at that management style, how frustrating is it when you see a profit of $10,000 on your P&L and you have $2,000 increase in your bank?
Right.
And you're going, where the hell did it go?
Yeah.
Right. So it's really important to understand the P&L, but you need to grasp and embrace the fact that financials are three documents, and you need all three. It's like a tripod. You got to have all three legs to sit on. Okay. So the next things we're going to look at, these are balance sheet calculations, and these are here for us to see, number one, the liquidity, the financial health, the short-term financial health of your company, and the long-term solvency of your company. I'm going to tell you that when you go to the bank or you got to send your financials to a vendor or anything like that, they don't look at the P&L first. They look at your balance sheet.
Right.
Because they want to see if you can take on more debt. They want to see if you can pay that debt off. So they look at the balance sheet first. Now, I don't go into balance sheet here because, I mean, gosh, we could just spend a whole another session just on balance sheets, right? But the current ratio, quick ratio, these are liquidity calculations to determine the financial short-term health over the next 12 months of the company. Okay. Basically, a current ratio, we're looking for 2.5 or higher. It's a ratio, 2.5 to 1. What it means is for every current liability, which is a liability that's going to be paid within 12 months, you have the $2.50 of current assets, which are assets that you can turn into cash within 12 months to satisfy that debt. If you're at 2.5 or higher, you're in a healthy spot. Now, the next one is quick ratio. And what quick ratio is, it's really the current ratio, same thing, but what it does is it pulls inventory out. Why? Because if you think about it, if you've got to turn your inventory into cash really quick, we're talking fire sale. If I buy a part for $1, what are the chances I'm going to get somebody's going to walk in and say, hey, I'll give you $1 for that part, right? Nope, there's a bunch of vultures. We're all a bunch of vultures at times. We see somebody hurting and I'll pay you 10 cents on a dollar. So a lot of times what the bank will do is they realize that they will pull the inventory out to look at what the rest of your current assets will do against your current liabilities.
And those are depreciated assets, right, Rick?
What's that?
If there was equipment in there, they would be depreciated assets.
Well, equipment would be under fixed assets.
And they're not in the quick ratio. Okay.
Or the current ratio. No.
Okay.
So let me explain. Current assets. There's 3 different kind of assets accounts. You have current assets. That's your money on hand, savings accounts, accounts receivable, inventory, prepaid expenses, stuff like that. Stuff that you could get back in cash. Okay. Then you have your fixed assets. Fixed assets are typically the assets that generate your sales. They're the computers, the fixtures, the tools, equipment, lifts, stuff like that, vehicles. Those are your fixed assets. So when we're looking at short-term liquidity of the company, we put the fixed assets off to the side. We're just looking at what we can turn into cash within the next 12 months.
Rick, are shops carrying accounts receivable?
Some more than they should, for sure.
Okay.
And I'm just going to give you a real quick management tip on that. Someone asked if I could cuff them on it. And I told them that when I opened up my bank account, we made a deal. They wouldn't fix cars and I wouldn't loan money.
Right.
Right. I'm not in the business of loaning money. You got to understand that when you're a service provider, you're there to solve issues and be there to help them. When you've got to start to chase the money, it changes the dynamic and it's a problem. And the other thing you got to understand, and it's a really interesting situation. I'm going to do it with my fingers here. But you have a customer need is very, very high at the beginning, right? At the very beginning of the situation, man, I need my car back. I don't have the money. Can you please help me out? I'll give you my first kid, my left arm, and everything else to get it done. I promise. And you're like, yeah, okay, because your need is down here. It's not really a big deal. I can pay for the parts in a month, blah, blah, blah. But what happens over time is the customer, once they get that car back, all of a sudden their need goes down over time and your need goes up. And what happens is when it goes up, it starts to get emotional for you as the owner, because now this is something they're doing to you. The other thing, if you have a lot of receivables, I need you to understand the psychology behind this. Your customer's looking for a big score. They owe you $500 and they're waiting for that week where they can pay you that whole $500. If you have somebody that's overdue, do yourself a favor today, call them up and say, look, I know we're behind on this. Let's come up with a payment plan. And work the payment plan. Let's do $50 a week. Let's get the 510 weeks. It'll be all paid and you'll get your money a lot faster. We all do the same thing. If I borrow money from somebody or I say, I'm going to do this, I'll pay it back this. We have very grand illusions of what's possible and it really isn't true. So you got to be very, very careful with that. That was a rabbit hole, but I hope it helped. Next week,
thanks.
What's that?
So good. I love it.
Okay. So next we go to solvency, debt ratio, right? And debt to equity. if you look at it, your balance sheet is a very simple math equation. Assets, which are what the company owns, not the owners, but the company, is equal to liabilities, which is what the company owes, plus equity, which is what the owners of the company or shareholders own. So I want to see the ratio of debt to equity. And I want to make sure, see, if I have you're looking at a 4.0 or less. If I'm at 4.0, that means 80% of the company is debt leverage, 20% is owned by the owners. That's okay. Right? When I'm looking at it from a debt to equity, the lower it goes, the more the shareholders own. Okay. So it's looking at long-term solvency. You want to make sure that at 66%, that the assets that the company owns is less than 66% debt leveraged.
So that would be what? 2/3 though. So
Right.
would that not be 2 or less? Or
No, because remember, debt ratio is liabilities to total assets.
Mm-hmm.
Debt to equity is liabilities to equity. It's two different comparisons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I still want 66%, no more than 60% debt load on the company.
I see. Mm-hmm.
But I want to make sure as an owner, I have at least 20% equity in the company every year.
This is exactly why this is so important. And if you can just pick out what are these half dozen KPIs that on an expense side, you need to just be reviewing on a monthly basis and just say, am I still in line? Am I still in line? Because these are all different measurements, right? They're not
Absolutely.
the same look at the different looks at the same thing. So this is super valuable, Rick. Thank you.
You're welcome. And again, if somebody wants to, look at their balance sheet, has questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help in any way I can. And I'll do that without any expectation of anything. It really does come down to, can we help you get a handle on your business?
Yeah.
I started with working with a shop that was $100,000 negative equity in his company. Well, for him to have $100,000 of negative equity, it meant I have $100,000 of assets, let's say. He had $110,000 in liabilities and a minus $10,000 in equity, right? Because that 100,000 assets has to, the liabilities and equity have to equal that 100,000. So he's upside down in ownership, and a year later, he's got $100,000 of equity. Okay. We can make changes to this. Balance sheet changes are more elegant, right? They happen more over time. Okay. But it's by getting smarter on the operation side of the business, and it flows into the balance sheet. So these are all here, and this is monthly. Carolyn, I really tried to keep this very, very simple. Okay. If you look at this daily and you look at this weekly and this monthly, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers for the month. Right. And if you noticed, I'm keeping them 5 to 6 numbers daily, 5 to 6 numbers weekly, 5 to 6 numbers monthly. Okay. But what it does is it gives you such a firm measurement on the pulse of your business at any given time. Like, I was looking at a balance sheet of one company in January and compared it to April. And I saw that their numbers were going really haywire. And I was like, okay, what happened? Their inventory doubled. They went from $15,000 to $30,000 in inventory in 4 months. Happens all the time if we're not watching it. All those little parts you buy and you don't sell and you forget to send back. Anybody watching now? All that crap adds up.
We could do a whole show just on inventory. You were talking about inventory earlier, and I was going to ask you some questions, but anyway.
Okay.
Hey, let's look at yearly because we're running out of time. I don't want to.
I'm sorry.
I'm like, ooh, what's yearly? What's yearly?
Yearly's pretty easy. What we're going to do is, today, inventory is not a big deal with shops. Carolyn, you might have a little bit more inventory than a lot of other shops due to your specialty.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that you've got the right inventory in there. So what's called inventory turns, and it's still appropriate. I went into a truck shop not too long ago. He had $500,000 of inventory.
Mm-hmm.
No. $500,000 of inventory.
No, I know, it's insane. Mm-hmm.
Okay. He wasn't turning twice a year. He didn't do 2 turns a year. Okay. And that's just money wasted.
I've heard 1 month a turn. We currently are at around 2 months at my
So
shop.
So you're doing 6 turns a year.
6 turns a year, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, even that I've heard it should be 1. That can be harder depending. It's an average, right? So you've got fast movers and you got, anyway, we're getting in inventory. Keep going.
But really, it's looking, if I can see 5 to 7 turns a year on the inventory, then I'm okay with what the inventory value is and where it's at. If it goes, if it goes up higher, maybe we're getting more elegant with the inventory. We're dropping some of it. Or if it goes the other way where it drops and I'm getting 2 turns, 3 turns a year, now I've got too much in stock and we got to get rid of the stuff that's not moving. Okay. Now, the other one that's really important is return on equity. Return on equity is a really important thing because here's what you all said when you started your shops. You all said, I don't trust the stock market. I believe that if I open this repair shop and make an investment in this vehicle for investment, it's going to give me a better return than the stock market will.
I've been told that return on equity is exactly how you'll be valued if you want to sell your business.
There's a bunch of different ways. Return on equity has a part in it. I give people this, a really quick way to see what the business is worth down and dirty is typically 4 to 5 years of profit plus assets. Okay. But this is equity right here. Return on equity is I've made this investment. Am I getting an investment back? I should be getting a distribution check every quarter just because I made an investment in the company, not doing a damn thing, but just putting my money into that account, into that venture. When I talk to shop owners about shareholder distributions, their eyes glass over and their heads fog up and they're like, what? Because the reality is most shop owners have not created a business. They've created a very meager paycheck. And I want them to stop being employees and I want them to stop being business owners and I want them to become CEOs.
Right. There's really 2 hats you got to wear, right? You got to wear the operator hat, CEO hat, and then you got to wear your investor hat. And it's hard because it's hard to take one off, and you end up discounting yourself as the investor, which is where like an outside party coming in to potentially buy your business. If they're not going to make a return, they're not running the business, then the business is, again, there's no value to someone from the outside. It's only you running it. And then there's no extra, there's no reassurance that they're going to be able to make any money on top of that.
Absolutely. I bought a business. When I bought my shop, I realized I was going into a hole, but I bought it really cheap, right? I wasn't making enough money to cover the guy that owned the building that I bought the business. He wasn't paying himself rent and he wasn't paying himself on the books. And there wasn't enough profit to pay these things. Okay. And that was an issue. So I realized I was in a hole. You got to make sure there's enough cash. If you're going to sell your business, there's got to be enough cash every month for them to pay whoever's going to buy the business to be able to pay themselves a good wage and satisfy the debt and have profit there to take care of equipment upgrades, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now I know we're getting near the end. Let me go through the last thing and then we're done. And that last thing is a customer attrition rate. One of the things that we don't look at is our database. And you need to look at your database every year. How many people did you lose in the last 12 months that haven't come in? And how many new people came in over that last 12 months? You would be amazed. You got shops that aren't marketing. They had a 1,000 person database and they lost 17% over 2 years. And now they're slow and they can't figure out why. And that's because the database shrunk. Every year you should be aware of whether your database is growing, which is what we want, because if you're not growing, you're dying, or is it shrinking? And, if you have a shop that brought in 100 new customers but lost 200, that's a problem.
Sure. That's a really high churn. What's the time period you recommend here? 12 months,
12
you
months,
said?
once a year. Yeah, I think if you do it any more than that, it gets to be a little bit too short a period. It can be misleading.
Right. I'm just going to do a plug here. We don't currently show that churn number on our customers dashboard on analytics. I'm going to add it and I'll post on the Facebook group when it's there.
That's
But
awesome.
that's great. So I'll build that in, and that'll be another thing that you can quickly reference in whatever period you want.
I would look at it, monthly. If it's there and you don't have to play with it, it's easy to do. Look at it once a month and see if you're growing. Right? It's kind of that new customer thing, that 20 to 30% new customers. Because if you have it, it makes all the difference in the world.
You could do like trailing. You could do trailing 3 months.
Mhm.
You could do a trailing period, right? So you could actually look at not what is my current attrition rate for whatever date range, like last year, last month, whatever, but actually see how it's changing, because presumably those downtrends below 1 means you're pissing people off, or you're keeping people, you're making people happy. No, I'm sorry. Am
You
I
want
right
it
about
less than 1. You
Right, so
want it less than 1. If you go
less than 1,
above
you're
1, we have a problem.
Now we got a problem, right? Exactly. So over 1, we got an overeager service advisor, or somebody who's not great on the phone. And if we're under 1, we're doing a good job.
It's a measurement of the whole shop, how the whole shop works together, and it could be a hell of a KPI incentive.
Indeed, that's a great thing to bonus people off too. I'm going to work on that. To be continued.
To be continued.
Thank you, Rick.
Cool.
Great. This whole
Rick,
thing is great.
Rick, let me ask you a question. As I was listening to you, and I've had my share of financial training, and have seen my own personal business's P&L and balance sheet. Would you classify a profit and loss statement as like a blood test, and then would you classify the balance sheet as a genetic test?
I don't know.
I'm just stretching.
Here's the thing. Your P&L is always a historical document.
Yeah.
It tells you what happened in the past. Here's the sales I created in that period. Here's the cost and expenses that were needed to get that. Here's the profit. Your balance sheet is a living, breathing, dynamic document that changes with every interaction you make in your shop. When you make a sale, it changes the balance sheet. When you pay a bill, it changes your balance sheet. When you take on a loan, it changes the balance sheet. So knowing where you're at with that balance sheet and realizing it's dynamic all day long can really make a difference in how you see your business. Because when you look at your business and you realize, hey, short term I'm doing okay, but long term I have a problem, I got too much debt. We know we got to pay the debt down, right? So we put that in there, we get that healthy again, and then we just maintain. It's not hard to do, and the other thing we talked about was cash flow once a month. That's the third document, is the statement of cash flow, right? Because everybody thinks profit is king, and it's not. Cash flow is. Because you could have all the profit in the world, but if you're running negative cash flow, cash is the oxygen to your business.
Boy, I have to tell you, and I won't tell this long story, but I used to get cash flow statements on groups of stores that I led years ago, and I kept looking at that saying, there's a problem. I have this one store that will not cash flow. And I know these people there, and I've been to it, and I know the leadership there. There's got to be a problem with the numbers. So I went back to accounting. Accounting took a look at it and says, Carm, it can't be. Well, we found out somebody was stealing from us, and the cash flow statement showed us that so succinctly. And I refuse to see it. I didn't want to see it, I guess. Right. And so 3 months later, there was a termination and all that stuff that goes with somebody stealing from you. And maybe you should come back and show us the value of the cash flow statement and how inventory and receivables and all that works, everything that you buy, all the cash you get, and how it all applies. Hey, this was Lucas. We haven't heard you in the last, say, 20 minutes. Did you learn anything new from Rick here today?
Oh, listen, every single time he talks, I learn something. And here's the deal, right?
That's right.
Is that these numbers are the lifeblood of your business. These reports are the lifeblood of your business. But we see a large majority of shop owners who never look at them. And that's sad because this is where I found the guidance to fix my business, right? And as soon as I began to understand these numbers a little bit, be able to look at them, had somebody in my corner who could help me with these numbers, my business began to improve and I didn't feel powerless, right? I see so many shop owners that feel really powerless about where their business is going and what's happening. But if you don't have data, right? I compare it to fixing a car. right? I know what the car sounds like when it's not running right. I know how it smells. I know everything that I need to do to correct that concern. Well, it's the same thing with your business. But you can't do that without an advocate in your corner. You know, we always talk about Dutch, and Dutch has always said to me, son, you are your customer's advocate when it comes to auto repair. I'm going to tell you, if I didn't have somebody like Rick and Carolyn in my corner as advocates for me, I'm going to have a really hard time making a profitable business. And it's not that I didn't want to. It's that I never, A, had somebody to push me, and B, never had somebody to lead me in the direction that I needed to go and help me understand those things, because I was a technician and then I became a service writer, and I'm slowly becoming a business owner. But it didn't happen overnight. I had to have somebody to teach me and guide me in that direction.
A little help from our friends.
Here's the thing I'd like to just finish up with, kind of. I started off with saying last week that the biggest mistake we make in this industry is we think we're in the business of fixing cars. And what the typical shop owner does comes from a technical background, Karen, like you said last week, which is true. That's where I came from, right? I grew up in the industry. Is we think shop owners think that if I put all my attention to cars here, the financial stuff will just take care of itself over here, and it doesn't. And it never will. You have got to learn. And then I listen to shop owners go, oh, I hate the numbers. I'm not good at them. I hate them. I don't like bookkeeping. I don't care if you like bookkeeping. You need to understand your numbers. You don't have to do the bookkeeping. You got to know your numbers. And I have shop owners all the time. I don't care about the numbers. I just want to fix cars. And my recommendation is close the shop and go to get a job as a tech.
Right.
That's what you need to do.
Carolyn, any final word from you?
I was saying a little help from your friends. I mean, this is what this industry is all about, is being able to learn from each other and get the resources that we need to do all the hard stuff on the cars, and obviously running our business and taking care of our employees and all that stuff we talked about today. I also wanted to say thank you to you, Carm, for broadcasting that help of our friends across the industry, across shop owners, across other vendors, across everybody who makes this industry possible, and just letting us, benefit from each other on an exponential basis. So this is always such a pleasure to get the four of us together. I appreciated it all over again this week. Thanks for doing it. And
this could become a series. Oh my!
I know. It's like I just want to keep going. Rick, thank you so much.
You and I think so much alike. It's scary because what I wrote down on my last thing is don't do it alone. And you just said that. We connected perfectly. Rick, thank you so much for the KPIs that you gave us. I mean, these last two episodes, Rick gave you your marching orders. Now, please watch this, write them all down, take some screenshots, and start living in the world of reaching your goals. Rick White, 180 Biz, Lucas Underwood, Ellen, and you had a final screen. We should put that up, Rick. Why don't you show us your final screen? Oh, you took it off. Okay.
I took it off. It was just the last three things. So
180 Biz, Lucas Underwood from L&N Performance Blowing Rock, North Carolina, and Carolyn Coquillette, CEOs Shop-Ware and Luscious Garage. Thank you all. Have a great couple of days.
Thanks everybody.
Take care. Go make some money out there.